When I was reading the first two Little House books, the back of my mind was wondering why this series is so controversial. It's mostly about farm chores. I quickly realized this book is why there's controversy. It's the racist book. And unfortunately, it's the most well known book also, because the TV series was named after it. As usual, I am going to summarize the plot of the book in my review. If you don't want to hear about racism against Native Americans, please stop watching this video. Watch one of my other videos instead. Argo Font Book Review. Argo Font Book Review. Pa decides the Wisconsin woods are too crowded. Instead of seeing other people once a month, he sees new people every day. That's way too much social interaction for Pa. He decides the family has to move out west to Kansas, where practically nobody lives. The trip is long and occasionally dangerous. Their horses almost die in a sudden river flood, and their dog is lost for a while. They stop in Indian country. Pa tells Laura she'll probably see a papoose. Somehow Laura gets it into her head that she's going to get a baby Indian for a pet. Granted, the real-life Laura was only 3 years old at the time, but it's still racist and uncomfortable to read every time Laura complains to her parents that she wants an Indian baby. Pa finds an area he likes with hundreds of wild animals to eat. It's about 40 miles and 2 days away from town. They set up a semi-permanent camp near the wagon, while Pa builds a log cabin house. It takes a long time, especially since Ma is injured by one of the house logs. Pa gets a neighbor named Mr. Edwards to help finish building the walls. The house doesn't have doors or windows for a few weeks. I kept waiting for the book to explain how the family gets in and out of the house each day. Maybe they use ladders to climb in and out through the roof. Pa builds a stable for the horses, and he unknowingly travels through the territory of a wolf pack. He builds doors for the house. Pa is especially proud of himself because he used pegs instead of nails. A real man doesn't have nails in his house. This is an awkward way for me to learn I'm not a real man. The girls have fun helping Pa build a chimney because they get to pick out stones and make mud. Finally, Pa makes a wooden roof and a floor. Their little house on the prairie is complete. One day, when Pa is away, 2 Indians come up to the house and go inside. Laura and Mary are terrified of the strange men. The Indians don't talk and they don't move much. Mostly they stare angrily at the Wilders. They wear skunk skins, so they smell strange. The Indians force Ma to make cornbread. They eat all of the food, then leave with Pa's tobacco. When Pa returns home, he is furious with the girls because they thought about setting the dog loose. He says they must never, ever disobey his orders. They must do as they're told no matter what happens. I'm pretty sure if Laura saved baby Carrie from dying in a well, Pa would punish Laura for touching the well without his permission. Cowboys pass through the area, and Pa spends several days building a well with a neighbor. There's a scare when the neighbor breathes a dangerous underground gas. Pa saves his life. Pa takes the girls to an abandoned Indian camp, where he teaches them how to figure out what happened by examining footprints. The girls find beads. Mary says the baby can have her beads. Ma glares at Laura until Laura gives up her beads too. Laura resents Mary for being so generous. As you might know, babies can't play with small beads, so Ma takes them away. Now nobody has beads. Thanks a lot, Mary. The family's bedridden when they all catch malaria. They're so sick, even getting a cup of water is too much effort. Fortunately, a black doctor just happens to pass by their house, even though it's miles away from anything else. The dog gets the doctor's attention, so the family is saved. Their neighbor thinks watermelons cause malaria. Pa is happy to hear there are watermelons nearby. He buys the biggest one he can and eats it all by himself. If watermelons did cause malaria, he would be dead now. The top of the chimney catches fire, which forces Pa to remodel the fireplace. He goes to town and trades his animal furs for many things, including glass for their windows. There is an old Indian trail not far from the house. The family is surprised when Indians start using it regularly. Like before, the Indians often enter the house and force Ma to make them food. Once, an Indian tries to steal Pa's furs, but another Indian stops him. A few times, Pa complains he thought there wouldn't be any Indians here. He heard that the politicians in Washington were going to force all the Indians to move west. Pa, next time you decide to move halfway across the country because of a rumor, you should make sure it's true first. On Christmas, Edwards comes with gifts from Santa Claus. The girls get a tin cup, a peppermint stick, a small cake, and a penny. Can you imagine? There was never such a wonderful Christmas. A panther causes trouble, and there's a prairie fire. Pa uses his plow to make a fire line around the house. Whenever a fire crosses the line, Ma and Pa beat it with wet sacks. That way, they save the house from burning down. In spring, there's a big gathering of Indians in the nearby bluffs. At first, Pa thinks it's a friendly jamboree, but the family soon realizes it's a war council. Most of the tribes are in favor of war. Every night there's loud drumming and yelling. It's frightening. The Wilders never leave their house that week. Fortunately for the settlers, the Osage tribe stops the war plans. They peacefully move out of the territory. Laura cries when she sees the procession of Indians leaving because she won't be able to get an Indian baby now. Things are peaceful for a few months until the United States government makes its official decision. They decree that the land belongs to the Indians. If the settlers don't move out immediately, soldiers will be sent to force them out. And so, after a year of living in a little house on the prairie, the Wilders are forced to leave. I was a little surprised when Pa mentions their house is only 3 miles past the border. 3 miles? That's all? It took them months to get here. If they had stopped one day earlier, all of the trouble of the book would have been avoided. The end. Post-book follow-up. I thought this book was on the boring side because over half of it is about building the house. Not a lot happens because the family stays home every day and the nearest person is 2 miles away. It was better than the previous book because it broke up the endless description of pioneer chores with some standalone stories, like the chapters about cowboys and malaria. This book has been banned in many places due to its racist content. In the book's defense, it's a historical fiction novel about settlers in the 1870s. The characters are racist against Native Americans because that's what actually happened in real life. About 5 of the 26 chapters focus on Indians. It would certainly be possible to publish a version of the book with all of the offensive parts removed. The book would still be over 250 pages long. They could also release a version of the book with an introduction that frankly discusses the racial issues. The introduction could serve as a content warning, while providing historical context both on the time the book takes place and the time the book was written. Like the 2 previous books, this book has a simple, childlike perspective. It's told from Laura's viewpoint. There's multiple places where Laura doesn't understand what's going on. She hero worships Pa and believes he is infallible, to the point that whenever Pa makes mistakes, Laura doesn't realize it. Pa knows exactly what to do in every situation. One has to wonder where he learned it all. One more thing, in this review I accidentally called them the Wilders. They're actually the Ingalls family. Laura hasn't met Mr. Wilder yet. Sorry, I didn't want to go back and re-record this entire review because it's kind of on the long side, so accept this apology for messing up the author's name. Overall, I'd say this is better than the second book, but not as good as the first. The racist parts are hard to read, and it feels like something is missing because unlike the 2 previous books, there's hardly any discussion of food. probably because all their food comes from paw hunting and not from farming. I give Little House on the Prairie a 4 out of 10.